Springfield's Talk 1041 and a good Monday morning, everyone. My name is Nick Reed. We have a Heroes Breakfast coming up this Friday. Our Friday Road show at Scramblers, sponsored by Extra Mile Home Inspection and Real Estate Repair. And then we've got a Heroes Breakfast for veterans. If you're a veteran, come on out, get yourself some breakfast. That thanks to Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, Delta Roofing, Serenity Honors, and, of course, Scramblers. And it's just as easy as showing up. Classes at Columbia University are all virtual today because of rampant anti-Semitism by left-wing activists, students there on the campus. We just don't know what to do. Why don't you just remove the students who are openly hostile towards Jews? I don't know, that seems like a pretty easy solution. They have no trouble whatsoever kicking students off university campuses if they trigger someone who's transgender, makes them feel uncomfortable. They have no troubles doing that. But these Democrats seem to have a very, very difficult time figuring out what to do with their anti-Semitic supporters. We saw this on full display with the three of those university heads last year that were testifying before Congress and point blank asked what many Americans would think is an easy question. Your policies on your campus here, is it not a violation to call for, finishing what Hitler started? Well, you got to understand the context and, It's amazing the level of difficulty they have figuring out what to do with it. People get kicked out of college all the time. Sometimes for academic reasons, sometimes for non-academic reasons. But the universities in this country, the vast, vast, vast majority are run by Democrats. And that is where anti-Semitism resides. And they will give a show of, no. They're dealing with anti-Semitism is much like dealing with abortion. And that is they don't mind the recognition that that they're not siding with the Jews so much. But when, like abortion, for example, they try and keep quiet the fact that they support it up until birth. Those within the Democrat Party that are more vocal about that, they try and just dismiss, they ignore, and they claim, well, we don't support it up until birth. But then you ask them, okay, well, where do you support at what point do you support abortion being illegal? They won't tell you. It's because it's till birth. When it comes to anti-Semitism, the Democrat Party doesn't have any trouble, acting as ambassadors for the desires of Hamas, demanding that Israel surrender to Hamas. They don't mind doing that. But there's this more outwardly expressive anti-Semitic wing that is on these college campuses that is also a representation of the party, just like the abortion until birth. But they recognize that doesn't look so good. So they try and pretend as if that's not who they are. And they get themselves in a rock and a hard place situation, much like with abortion, because they don't want the average person out there to know that when it comes to abortion, they support it all the way up until birth. But at the same time, they can't really strongly come out and say, well, here's where we support the cutoff, because they'll anger the segment of their party that is proudly supportive of abortion up until birth. It's a rock and a hard place for them. And this is where they're finding themselves with the anti-Semitism as well. This is why they aren't kicking their voting bloc off the university campuses. Not to mention the fact, and I think that this does oftentimes get overlooked, that the people who run many of these universities have the same belief systems. They're smart enough to know that they probably will get It may be damaging to their career path if they're as open about it. So they may not necessarily be there marching and holding up the signs and chanting from the river to the sea. Their job is to create an environment in which that sort of behavior is allowed to occur. The frenemy thing gets played up. You say, oh, the White House, oh, we condemn. This is awful. This is horrible. Oh, is it? Where are the threats to withhold funding from these universities? You know, this is an administration, and we saw it have an impact in Springfield, that announced it would withhold funding for meals in the public school system to poor children unless the school systems adopted their gender fluidity, gender ideology, belief system. This was one of the points of contention. There were enough pro-left-wing activists on the school board, unfortunately there still are, that utilize that as an excuse to vote on, compliance. So an administration and a political party that has no problem withholding funding for hungry, poor children to advance their political beliefs seemingly have absolutely no ability whatsoever to take meaningful action when it comes to anti-Semitism on college campuses. Oh, they'll condemn it. But they certainly will not use their position in order to actually do anything about it. And again, we all know why. The anti-Semitism that for so long they had been able to keep quiet within their party to the degree that they could claim it actually belonged in the Republican Party, Trump supporters, so forth, is now putting on full display for the world to see where the real anti-Semitism, the dangerous anti-Semitism is in this country. And it's in their party. And when you think about it, other than just the inner cities themselves, there's no geographic area in which the left has as much control over the rules, regulations, and the culture as they do university campuses. It's not a coincidence that's where we're seeing all this occur. The Pyramid Roofing Company talk at text line 447 KSGF. Latest news update. The first alert forecast sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. Sunshine today with a high near 70, mostly clear tonight, 49 for a low. Clouds 74 tomorrow. Wednesday mostly sunny, a high near 69. Wilder RV, it is your place for RVs. Brand new to the RV world, thought about the RV world, thought I can't afford an RV. That's for people outside of my tax bracket. You may be surprised you can get yourself a brand new RV to accommodate a family. Monthly payments as low as a night or two at a nice hotel. I think that is probably something that most people don't realize. And frankly, before I really began poking around in terms of what actual costs are and so forth with the financing that is available, Wilder RV, I too thought that, well, that's just not the sort of thing the average person can afford, but it really can. And with the folks and the amount of inventory they have at Wilder RV, there is no better place to go. It may be just an hour drive, a little over an hour drive north up in Clinton, Missouri, but I don't know that there's any drive that is as worth it as it is when it comes to all things RV. That's Wilder RV. You can find them KSGF.com under Nick's endorsements. Also WilderRV.com. Speaking of little vacations, want to thank James Clary for filling in on Thursday, Darren Chappell filling in on Friday. And then just let everyone know that we will be announcing soon the next Great Escape. I know we talked about it some last week, and that it will be coming up after the election in November, the 9th through the 15th, I believe, are expected to be the exact dates. But, excuse me, the details to come. And just, I know some of you did listen as we broadcast there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but it was just such a great time. And I want to thank everyone who went along. I love when people go along. It's their first time. I had actually had a conversation with one of the individuals who only went because a family member had wanted him to go. And the reason that he wasn't going to is because he had done one all-inclusive prior to this and had a horrible experience, and so thought that they were all that way, but said he just could not believe what a great time it was. And in fact said that if the same people that were on the Great Escape had been on the previous resort, that would have made it worth it just because of how incredible everyone was. And we got a bit of feedback, just the people that go along, and it's so consistent, the frequency of people who go for the first time saying, I was a little nervous about going with a big group, and you just don't know what to expect, but everyone is just so amazing and so much fun, and you just feel like that, you've been friends with these folks forever, and I know you had a good time.
Yes, I did. And I had so many people come up to me, especially in the airport whenever we were waiting for our flight back. Just so many people that were newbies that just had an absolute blast. And I love hearing that.
So do I.
I'm so
Yeah.
glad that they were able to come. I'm so glad that they had fun. I cannot wait for the next one.
Yes, and I'll just reiterate, if you've not been on one of these and you have any sort of apprehension, I'm not aware of anyone who has gone on one of these and then thought, boy, I wish I hadn't done it, though there's a good chance that something like that happens and they're just not going to say it. But given, I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's obvious a majority, I'd say maybe 70 to 80% of the people who go every time have been on previous trips, some every single one of the trips. And so I think that speaks volumes. Keep your ears open. Like I said, a few weeks from now, hopefully it may even be open for reservations. We should know that within the next couple of days, but it was a great time as always. And a huge thank you to Cam and all of you for going along and just making it so incredible. And even though it is work to a large degree for us when we do the show, and then even on the days I'm not doing the show, there are a few other things I'm doing. You just couldn't ask for a better way to spend a work week than on the Great Escape. There is a new campaign ad out for Joe Biden. And I'll just play the audio for you, and then we shall discuss it. So this is a 30-second ad that's running in some of the swing districts across the country.
I've been a proud steelworker for 23 years, and I know hard work when I see it. I love to tell the story about meeting President Biden because when you meet him, this guy's as sharp as a knife. They have nothing else to attack because they can't attack the things that he's doing that are so good for this country. I see people going back to work, jobs coming to the area, infrastructure being fixed up. Joe Biden gets things done. That's just who he is.
I'm Joe Biden, and I approve this message.
All right, so the obvious theme here is is farcical, and that is Joe Biden is sharp as a knife. This again, and they keep saying this as if we don't have access to seeing Joe Biden, right? They act as if Joe Biden is a guy that you've never seen before, you've heard about. I don't know if you've worked somewhere. I mean, I'll just give you a real life example. There is our general sales manager here, Paul Windish. And when he got hired some time ago, he was not anyone that I had ever worked with. But there were a number of people in the building who had worked with him, and everybody was very excited about him coming on board. Everyone was very excited who had worked with him before in one capacity or another. And, if I would happen to say, well, that's good to hear, I've not met him, they would talk about, how great he was to work with. And this was encouraging to me because I did not know the guy. But that was because I had never had access to him. We all see Joe Biden. They are telling us about Joe Biden as if he is a new hire that they, as somebody that they've worked with in the past, but we've never met this individual. We've never seen him before. We have had no access to him. This is going to be our first exposure. This is not our first exposure to Joe Biden. We're all fully aware of who Joe Biden is. And if Joe Biden really, this is just so, it's shameful that in what once upon a time was viewed as the greatest country in the world, that we even have to have these sorts of discussions. But if Joe Biden really was, if he could turn it on and off, I guess, is this what we're supposed to believe? Like, this is the question. If he really is sharp as a tack and runs intellectual rings around world leaders, I mean, these are some of the claims that have been made by people. Oh, behind closed doors, or well, when I met him, or when I'm talking to him. Does this mean he's able to turn it on and off? It means one of two things. Either this is something that you can turn on and off, or it isn't, and it's just this amazing coincidence that it turns on his sharpness whenever the cameras are not on, whenever he is not in public, whenever he is not at a podium, that there's just some sort of affliction there that only allows him to be sharp and the smartest guy in the room when nobody sees it except for those people. It's like Big Bird with Snuffleupagus, where Big Bird he would tell everyone, Snuffleupagus is real. My friend Snuff, okay, yeah, sure. How come nobody can see it? Well, he just never happens to be around whenever. And this is Joe Biden's intelligence. Joe Biden's sharpness is Snuffleupagus. We just have to take Big Bird's word for it, that he actually exists. They're absurd questions that are based off an absurd premise. And on one hand, you would like to hear perhaps Karine Jean-Pierre, or actually, not even, it doesn't have to be a proactive question. Anytime a claim like this is made, which is quite often, the obvious question is, well, then why doesn't he act that way in public? That's an obvious question. Behind closed doors, why is it just behind closed doors? Why does he not behave that way outside of the closed doors? This has become such a joke. Weeks ago, even SNL did a cold open mocking not Joe Biden, but the people out there that continue to claim how sharp he is. Oh, and not just that, but he's so physically fit. The guy he goes and he goes and he goes. It's just like everyone else is exhausted, but Joe Biden, not him. And the campaign knows it, which is why they have to release an ad where it's here's another guy. This time someone working in the steel industry. Like, you wouldn't believe it. People who have experienced the sharp, physically with it Joe Biden are the people who have seen Bigfoot, right? They're very far and few between. They never have any actual evidence of it. There's no video evidence of it. No, nothing that they can demonstrate showing that what they claim they saw they actually did. But yet they exist. And they run around telling everyone, I saw Bigfoot, I saw Bigfoot. Oh, I talked to a sharp Joe Biden. I talked to an intellectual Joe Biden. Okay.
I don't know about you, but I am so tired of being told, oh, he's doing so much great things.
Yeah.
So many great things for this country.
You notice they don't list those things.
Right, yeah. Meanwhile, we're watching it literally burn. We've got protests happening at like every major university. The southern border's out of control. We've got literal wars happening. It's a hot mess.
It would be so easy for the Trump campaign or the RNC to do a parody campaign, and
they could use that audio.
Oh yeah, use that audio, and then just the drug trade and human trafficking and anti-Semitism on campuses, and giving the Taliban their own country, and working on behalf of Hamas to give them their own country,
and inflation.
And inflation, yeah. I mean, you could just, he's a busy guy. There have been a lot of results because of Joe Biden's presidency. That much is accurate. They're just not really good for the good guys, It seems as if the bad guys are the ones that always come out on top. Perhaps the bad guys also have access to the sharp-witted Joe Biden. Heroes Breakfast coming up Friday. Scramblers. Also, here's some Scramblers news. Half-price deal with Local for Less Ozarks. 10 a.m. this Friday. I'm sure you'll hear us talk about it. Well, I know you will throughout the week and Friday while we're at Scramblers. You can get a $50 gift certificate to Scramblers on Republic Road for just $25. So those of you who are listening who join us on Friday mornings, this is definitely a deal for you. I can guarantee you they are going to go so very, very fast. So you may want to set a reminder. And if you've got the app and your notifications on, you should get a reminder that way as well. And, of course, we'll be talking to you about it. So that will be 10 a.m. local for less, a $50 gift certificate to Scramblers for only $25 at ksgf.com. This Friday, 10 a.m. And I watch the coverage, as so many of you also do, of the non-disclosure agreement trial. That's what I call it. They call it the hush money trial of Stormy Daniels. And they always reference that Trump denies the affair. But what doesn't get referenced, and frankly probably because most people in the media don't even know it, is that Stormy Daniels also denied it for the longest time. She also denied it. That they seem to leave that out. That seems significant, right? If there was an accuser of a high-profile Democrat that they had to cover, of course, I know Tara Reid, who worked for Joe Biden, accused her of violence, or accused him of violent sexual assault. But, you know, that Me Too stuff didn't apply to her. But if there was a consensual relationship that was an accusation, and somebody had accused Joe Biden of having a consensual relationship, and they both denied it, and then all of a sudden during campaign season, the woman who had denied it all along said, oh, no, wait, it did happen. Do you think that the media would ignore the fact that she had denied it for the longest time? No, of course not. They would use it to discredit her. I have yet to see any report, in which they reference the allegations. They then reference Donald Trump denies it, but I've yet to see one report where they also reference that Stormy Daniels, up until a certain point, also denied it. First Alert Forecast, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. From Color 10, Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Sunny, 70 today, 49 for a low tonight. Tomorrow, cloudy, a high near 74. Wednesday, mostly sunny, high near 69. Earlier in the show, played it was sound from a new campaign ad that the Biden campaign is running, in which you have this steel worker who claims that he met Joe Biden, and, Joe Biden behind closed doors, he's as sharp as a knife. So I forget who it was. Someone had tweeted out, I found the knife, and it was a picture of a spoon. This on the heels of the fact the White House had to try and figure out the best way to explain Joe Biden out of claiming that his uncle was eaten by people. This something, of course, that occurred last week, and it was a story in which he was talking about his uncle who died in World War II, Biden claiming that he was eaten by people, that this was in the area of New Guinea, and that in that particular area were people who ate other people, and Joe Biden was suggesting that he had been eaten. This, of course, was contradicted by the facts that the plane crashed into the Pacific Ocean. Now, I suppose you could have had some of these individuals in New Guinea that were out there fishing and caught him and then thought, wow, this looks like a tasty fish. But there's no indication that anything like that happened. So once again, we're all left with the fact that this is just a story made up. And as usual, what turns out to be, just as humorous is the trying to excuse it away. When asked about his comments on Friday, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre claimed the president was having an emotional moment when he made the remark. Quote, the president had an emotional moment, and I think a symbolic moment. He had an opportunity as president to honor his uncle's service in uniform. He had an opportunity to be there as president, to speak to people that put their lives on the line on behalf of the country. So his uncle, who lost his life when the military aircraft had crashed in the Pacific after taking off near New Guinea. The president highlighted his uncle's story as he made the case for honoring our sacred commitment to equip those we send to war and take care of them and their families when they come home. And as he reiterated, the last thing American veterans are, or the last thing Americans should be called, are suckers and losers. This is part of the disinformation campaign where they falsely claim that Trump made those remarks. She went on to say those types of words should not come from a commander-in-chief, and as we have had in the past. Now, I would love to be in the room when they decide, okay, what are we going to say, right? Because clearly they don't leave this to Karine Jean-Pierre. When the president makes an absurd claim that everyone knows isn't true, most recently that people ate his uncle, you know that they don't go, well, Karine Jean-Pierre will take care of it. We don't need to worry about it. There is a grouping of individuals, whether it is the same people, there may be a staff that is dedicated solely for this purpose. It would be a full-time job. And they get together and they're like, okay, what are we going to say? So for those of you, everybody, welcome. We're going to go ahead and skip over notes of the last meeting because we don't have the sort of time necessary in order to go over all of that. For those of you who are not aware, Joe Biden claimed people ate his uncle. This did not happen. So, what are we going to say? All right, well, we got to throw a dig at Trump in there. Okay, so that's an easy one. Let's use the disinformation that he referred to those who lost their lives in war as suckers and losers. So, yeah, we'll get that in there. But what else? Well, let's just say that he was just so caught up in the moment in honoring his uncle. It was such an emotional moment for him that is what made him claim that people ate his uncle. Most of us have at some point talked about a friend, a loved one, a family member in a way that evokes emotion. Perhaps you have. Not even necessarily unfortunate circumstances. I mean, yeah, maybe you're giving a toast at a wedding for somebody that you care about, your brother, your sister, but it could be something unfortunate. Many of us have spoken at wakes, spoken at funerals, and it's emotional. Because of that emotion, have you ever like just even begun or had the thought, maybe I should throw in there people ate my uncle, or people ate my father, or people ate my son? That it was eaten by people. Is that listen, I know everyone has their own experience, and anytime there's a tragedy, there's that recognition that everybody deals with grief differently. I think that Joe Biden clearly is beyond the grief point, talking about his uncle in World War II. That was some time ago, but I suppose, given the dementia thing, sometimes memories that occurred decades ago, they seem as if they just happened. So give him benefit of the doubt. His dementia, his senility is part of the reason that he was, according to the White House, having an emotional reaction to telling the story about his uncle dying. But I still have never really met anyone who, because they were telling an emotional story about a loved one, threw in there the fact that people ate that loved one. But this is a unique time with a unique administration. And perhaps next time I do, or maybe it can be part of a therapeutic grief counseling that if you do ever in the future, and most of us will at some point, have that moment in which we do need to talk about someone from our family who has passed on, even if it's like 60, 70, however many years ago, so be it. That part of dealing with that trauma is to falsely claim that that loved one was eaten by other people. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Streaming live, KSGF.com, the KSGF app. Also, we are on YouTube. You can watch us there. The live video feed sponsored by Springfield Wraps, designer of the KSGF studio. Biden was speaking at an event recently, and part of what the Biden campaign is doing, of course, is doing everything they can to tie Trump up in court. So because every moment he's in court, he isn't out there on the fundraising trail, and he's not out there on the speech trail. So this is all part of the coordinated effort to prevent him from campaigning for the presidency. Election interference. And one of the comments that he made at the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers Construction and Maintenance Conference in Washington, D.C., was to play off of trying to make Trump the rich, out-of-touch guy, while Joe Biden is the understanding, lunch pail Joe, blue-collar worker guy. That's who Joe Biden is. Biden said at the event, they learned, and my opponent learned, the best way to get rich is inherited. I can't argue much with that. Now, this is the idea that, and this is absurd. Donald Trump got rich because he was given $1 million loan or something, or $10 million, whatever it was, from his father. First off, it was a loan. And secondly, that does not make anyone wealthy. You can give $1 million loan or a $10 million or $100 million, however much you want, to 100 different people. Some of them will be dead in a week. Some are going to blow it on jet skis and big screen TVs. Some people will use it wisely and invest it. And will take it and make it a lifelong financial success. And that's what Donald Trump did. Donald Trump did not become wealthy because he was handed wealth. Look at all the money that Hunter Biden, or the Bidens themselves, receive. You see the millions and millions and millions of dollars that have flowed into the bank accounts of Biden's from all these foreign interests. And Hunter Biden's able to, finger paint, get $500,000 of painting, yet all Joe Biden appears to have from it is an old Corvette. Hunter Biden has nothing. I mean, that we know of. There's no usage of those dollars of investment. There's no expanding it. There's no capitalizing off of those revenue sources. He also went on, Biden, to say they learned to pay taxes is for working people, not the super wealthy. They learned that telling the people you're fired is something to be laughed at. Now, where I come from, not where I was raised, he said. He's claiming that this is part of the portrayal of Trump as this out-of-touch individual who's cold-hearted and turned the term "you're fired" into a punchline, and that's not a punchline for Joe Biden. Not where he was raised, which, depending on any given day, is anywhere from a black historical college to a Puerto Rican neighborhood. Now, I think that this is actually, I don't know if telling is that, but it's a moment that one can reflect on and see that there is some truth here, and that while "you're fired" wasn't actually ever a punchline, that wasn't anything. I mean, people may have used it as that, but that wasn't. If you watch the show Apprentice, this is just such a fundamental difference between the approach Donald Trump takes versus people like Joe Biden. The whole point of the show, The Apprentice, people were given challenges, and whomever was the least successful was, quote, fired. And this was done until there was one person left. In other words, the individual that through their actions proved to be the most capable and successful was the one who succeeded. See, once upon a time, that was what made this country great. I think this is beyond symbolism. The accuracy of the Biden administration and Joe Biden out there mocking that concept. Mocking the concept of people being given the opportunity to fill certain positions because they prove that they're the best at it. The Biden administration and the approach, generally speaking, in the establishment is the opposite of that approach. And look what a wonderful set of results we get for it. This administration could use a little bit of "you're fired" here and there, particularly when you look at failure after failure after failure after failure. The fact that, I use Afghanistan as an example once again, that complete humiliating debacle. Not a single person not only wasn't fired, but reprimanded. They were given pats on the back. Fantastic job. You know, when then, what was Secretary, I forget his position, Brown. Bush called him Brownie. Bush was just reamed because he said, "You're doing a great job, Brownie, regarding Hurricane Katrina." How could Bush be so out of touch? Yet this administration passes out attaboys for the humiliation of Afghanistan. I think this is a perfect illustration, whether it was meant to be symbolic or otherwise, for Biden to mock Trump as somebody who's cold-hearted because, he uses "you're fired" as a punchline. When that approach wasn't a punchline, it was built up, though it was done for the purposes of entertainment, but the premise was individuals who believed that they were the best at what it was that they could be given as any sort of task. They would be given these tasks, and whomever demonstrated of the particular grouping that they were the least successful, they were the ones that were fired, and that continued until the best rose to the top, and then that individual was hired as an apprentice to Donald Trump, versus the approach that we see in Washington, D.C., the approach we see the Biden administration, and the more you fail, the more that you're rewarded. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. There's an article in Politico referencing, I think it's this weekend, is the White House Correspondents' Dinner. And it's a Politico piece titled, "There's no longer anything funny about DC's humor dinners." And as you can imagine, you know whose fault it is. It's Donald Trump's fault. And, it talks about the history of these things. And what's the reason it's Donald Trump's fault is because he just made them so mean, see. And in part of this, they illustrated as an example. He made jokes about Hillary Clinton. See, the way that these have always worked in the past were Republicans made fun of themselves and Democrats made fun of Republicans, ultimately. I mean, that was the game in modern history. That's what you're supposed to do. They are there in order to laugh, and the left never laughs at itself. It's just incapable of doing so. And I thought it was just so perfect that this was written up as, well, when Donald Trump made fun of Hillary Clinton instead of himself, of course. It just soured the whole thing, and now everything's so mean. I think that there is nothing that is a better, more accurate demonstration of so many of our problems than that dinner, where you have just the absolute elite of the elite coming together, the people who are not affected negatively by the very policies that they campaign for and they push, getting together and just yucking it up, while the rest of us are trying to figure out how to make ends meet. It is a scene from Hunger Games. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. A1 Custom Car Care, all of your car care needs, your family's car care needs, your friends' car care needs, and that now includes full tire service. Whether it's plugging a hole or maybe you need all new tires, you need those installed in the best way possible. A1 Custom Car Care does that as well. So it's very convenient. You don't have to go to two places. You're going to get your oil change. You need some routine maintenance done anyhow. You can have it all done at one time. A1 Custom Car Care for all of your car care needs. It was last week that the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, implored wealthy residents of the city to donate money to purchase property that can be used to house the city's homeless population, which continues to grow. Bass said, right now we're working to move past nightly rentals. We're asking the most fortunate Angelinos to participate in this effort with personal, private sector, and philanthropic funds to help us acquire more property, lower the cost of capital, and speed up housing. This is the mission of our new capital campaign, LA for LA. The new program will depend on the humanitarian and generosity of the private sector, the Democrat added. LA for LA can be a sea change for Los Angeles, an unprecedented partnership to confront the emergency, an example of disrupting the status quo to build a new system to save lives. Now, it was just 2023 that Bass set a goal of moving 17,000 homeless people off the streets of the city in her first year in office. And in fact, 21,000 people have been moved into temporary shelters, often into hotel and motel rooms. But despite housing those individuals, the homeless population actually grew, rising 9% in the city and 10% in the county as of last year's homeless count. And homeless encampments have returned, often to the very places from which they were removed. Now, there's a few components to this that all, once again, illustrate the failures of an approach that so many people insist on taking over and over and over and over again, despite failure after failure after failure. One, I love that here you have a person in government that is turning to the private sector in order to do this. Because, in fact, private individuals and private institutions going about attempting to truly help individuals who are homeless to become self-sufficient is the most effective way to actually get it done. Not 100% because you're dealing with human beings, but it's the most successful. What we have learned is the least successful way to help individuals in need, particularly with homelessness, is government. It has the absolute worst success rate. In fact, not only does the government not solve the problem, it makes it worse. And this is yet another example. Billions of dollars. You see this in blue county, blue city after blue county after blue city. We're going to solve the homelessness problem. We got 17,000 homeless people. We're going to put them all in homes. Oh, put them all in these homes, temporary housing. And then not only do 17,000 new individuals pop up, as this story demonstrates, the exact same place where the homeless were once upon a time, there's even more of them. So now, not only do you have, in this case, using these numbers, 17,000 homeless individuals that the taxpayers are on the hook for providing them a home, but now you have even more than homeless than you did to begin with. And here is the reason why. Anytime you have a municipality, a jurisdiction, that makes it more comfortable to be homeless, you are going to have more homeless people. If you say, guess what, we're going to build mini homes. or we're going to force hotels to house you if you're homeless, or we're going to, do that. We will do these things for you that most of you could do for yourselves. Guess what's going to happen? You're going to draw people in. It isn't so much, though, over time generationally. It does add to the problem of creating new homeless. But what it does, the short-term influx of or increase in homelessness that these efforts cause are because of homeless that move to that area. Because they're like, sweet. Oh, but all the housing gets filled up. Why would they come if all the housing is filled up? Well, first off, they do. And the answer for this is a couple of different reasons. One, well, they get there, and it's just as good as where they were before, perhaps even a little bit better, so might as well stay. But there's also because then what you do is they see here you've got the mayor in this particular jurisdiction, you got Bass out there saying we need to do more. So they recognize that the people in charge are going to do what they can in order to also make their lives easier. This really isn't a difficult concept to understand. But there are a number of different reasons why the people in charge continue to go down this path. One, because, oh, look at me, how compassionate I am. I'll receive awards from different advocacy organizations, though I will say that we're seeing more and more advocates of the homeless who are coming out against these sort of efforts because they recognize that it's not only not doing good, but it's creating more homeless. When the panhandling ban, though it wasn't a panhandling ban, but several, most of you recognize Springfield, when the weather, along with spring, with the May, the April showers bringing May flowers, also brought panhandling to all of the major intersections. And the city kept saying, there's nothing we can do about it. There's nothing. They came up with this absurd idea at some point. Well, if we give free air-conditioned shuttle service and free snacks and water to places where they can apply for jobs, and this is going to take care of the problem. And those of us who understand human behavior, so that's not going to work. And it didn't take long for them to realize, oh, yes, this isn't going to work. And so that stopped. And then they eventually, without saying we're banning panhandling, created these ordinances in the city saying, okay, well, not just but no one can stand at an intersection with these certain conditions. And it was for the purposes of allowing law enforcement to kick panhandlers off these corners. And after that occurred, there was a real decrease. Now, it's slowly begun to come back, but it isn't to the degree that it was once upon a time before. At the exact same time that was occurring, people in Joplin were wondering where all these panhandlers coming from. I watched with some degree of amusement people that I was friends with on social media who lived in that area openly saying, does anybody notice there's a lot more panhandlers? They were people who left here to go there because the conditions that were created in Springfield made it less comfortable for panhandlers than it was in Joplin. So they went where it was more comfortable for them to become a panhandler. Anytime and I get it, it makes you feel good. We have to do something, particularly when it becomes very hot and in a climate where it becomes very, very cold. And most people are compassionate human beings, and it just makes us feel good. It makes us feel good to just say, well, let's just do something, whatever. Let's just create housing. But there's a reality to this. And the reality is, when you create conditions that makes it easier to be homeless, you will get more homeless. And people can argue till they're blue in the face as to the reasons why. You can disagree with my assessments as to why this is the case, but you cannot disagree with the reality. Every one of these blue-run cities, whether they're run blue or otherwise, the more money they spend to house the homeless, the more homeless they get. That is a consistency. Springfield's Talk 1041, latest news update. First Alert forecast sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements from Color 10, Fox 49. Meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Sunshine, a high near 70 today, 49 for a low tonight, 74 and clouds tomorrow. Then Wednesday, mostly sunny, high near 69. KSGF.com, your chance to win tickets to Casting Crowns, the Black Oak Amphitheater. That performance Thursday, September 12th. Special guest Katie Nicole. And again, your chance to win tickets for that event by going to KSGF.com. Get yourself registered there. The mayor of Kansas City has invited illegals to leave New York and Denver and come to Kansas City, saying all are welcome. This idiot, apparently unwilling to recognize the failures of other cities doing just this. And they're more than willing and more than welcoming this idiotic invitation so that they can pawn off this problem on Missouri. Kansas City Mayor Quentin Lucas took to social media last week to share that he's more than willing to take on these illegals from cities like New York and Denver and these other cities that are desperately doing everything they can in order to get. Look how dumb, how absolutely dumb. We're watching police officers get assaulted, innocent people being murdered. These illegals brazenly, in many instances, committing crimes, squatting, apparently hoarding firearms illegally, molesting and raping children. You have this idiot in Kansas City that's saying, well, we'll take them, yeah. He wrote on X, formerly Twitter, all are welcome in Kansas City. Evidently, he's a little jealous that St. Louis gets more attention when it comes to crime. Well, what can we do to really step it up here? All are welcome in Kansas City, he wrote. Proud to work with my fellow mayors, like Mayor Mike Johnson of Denver and New York City Mayor Eric Adams, as we work to ensure decompression of new arriving communities and collaborating among cities, labor nonprofits, and federal officials. Well, I'm sure they're more than glad to work with Mayor Lucas of Kansas City. I bet they are. I bet they are pleased as punch. They've got to be thinking, is this a joke? Surely there cannot be a mayor at this point in this country that is so stupid as to say, oh, those problems you're having there, we'd like some of that here in Missouri. We'd love to have that in Kansas City. Since April of 2022, New York City has received more than 180,000 illegals as a sanctuary city. New York has 64,400 illegals in its shelters, with Adams pleading with the Biden administration for assistance. I mean, is he this obtuse? Is this guy this stupid? Does he not understand why it is that these cities are desperate to get rid of these individuals? Has Mayor Lucas put out a listing of the elementary schools that are going to be closed in order to house these individuals? Has he put out a listing that way parents can go ahead and start figuring out now how it is that they're going to accommodate for their children not being able to go to school? Has the listing of hotels been put out yet that if you go to Kansas City to stay for the weekend or for any other event that you may end up losing your reservation or finding yourself in a hotel filled with illegals? Has he put out these listings? Because this is what every one of these other cities is dealing with and why they are desperately and frantically trying to unload the problem, which apparently, again, you've got this idiot mayor up in Kansas City that is saying, well, we'd love some of that. Just don't have enough challenges on our plate right now. You know what Kansas City needs? We need a little bit of that coverage. What, is he envious of all the press coverage that the illegal immigration problems in cities like Denver and Chicago? And do you know the number of diseases that have become irrelevant in this country that are making a comeback? Like smallpox and a lot of venereal diseases, by the way, sexually transmitted diseases. Diseases that are now impacting and affecting children. Not so much the STDs, but these others like smallpox. And it's because of these individuals that don't have vaccination. They come from these countries that have not dealt with those problems like we have in the United States, and they're bringing it here to the United States. And there are these outbreaks that are occurring, and lo and behold, they tend to come from these centers in which the illegals are being housed. Was Lucas a little bit envious? He thinks, oh, we could use a smallpox outbreak here in Kansas City. Ship them on over. Now, he's saying, well, we need the work. Or workers. We need a lot more employees here. Well, in case you haven't noticed, and I suppose it's just a matter of judgment, your counterparts over there, your Democrat mayors in cities like New York, they've realized that that payoff really isn't coming to fruition. If you really truly want more employees or need more employees, there are lots of ways that you can do it. One, you can have a business culture that is more inviting. You can give a little bit of relief to businesses by way of tax cuts and regulation cuts so that they have more money to pay employees. You can also make Kansas City a more attractive place by taking efforts that cut down on crime, not increase it. I mean, of all of the well-earned criticism that St. Louis has gotten, like the Wall Street Journal, I believe it was last week, had an entire piece written on just what an absolute train wreck St. Louis has made itself. And it's as if Mayor Lucas is, hold my beer. Just tired of St. Louis getting all this attention. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Heroes Breakfast coming up this Friday. Scramblers, we will be broadcasting live, sponsored by Extra Mile Home Inspection and Real Estate Repair. And then if you are a veteran, when you join us this Friday, Scramblers 6A to 9A, you will get free breakfast. That thanks to Delta Roofing, Serenity Honors, Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, and Scramblers, of course. It's as easy as that, so we hope we see you. We know it's days away. It's only Monday, but the day will arrive That will be Friday for you as a veteran to get free breakfast at Scramblers. First Alert Forecast, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals from Color 10 Fox 49, meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Sunny, a high near 70 today, clear 49 tonight, cloudy 74 tomorrow and Wednesday. Mostly sunny, a high near 68. Sarah Myers.
Thank you. Well, Missouri is doing what it does best, and that is those crazy temperature swings. We are going to be starting off this week today, in fact, with that frost advisory, like you mentioned, and we are going to be ending this week with temperatures up in the 80s. So those temperature swings, they can really cause quite a bit of damage when it comes to your roof. It can actually cause your roof to shift and to heave, and that can cause nail pops, and then those nail pops can actually lead to leaks. Now, I'm telling you all of this, I don't want to worry you, but if you do notice any changes or any issues, I want to give you the name of a great roofing company, and that is the Pyramid Roofing Company. Highly recommend them. I've used them. I know that Nick's used them for a couple of minor things, and I know that a lot of you have used them as well, and I recommend them because they are going to be upfront and honest with you. Their main goal is to provide you with the best solution for your roofing needs, and sometimes that doesn't mean a whole new roof, but maybe just a simple roof repair. Whatever your roofing needs, highly recommend the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, if it is time to go ahead and schedule that roof inspection, you can find all of the contact information for Josh and his team under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
Talking about the mayor of Kansas City that apparently thinks it is a good idea to invite all of these illegals that other mayors, Democrat mayors, have realized are causing very severe problems for their cities. And watching all of this on full display, and then to see a mayor of a major city say, well, we want some of that, is absurd to say the least. Now, he says it's because we need the jobs. If that's the best way, or the workers for jobs, if that is the best way that he can think of, I would suggest to the people of Kansas City, you probably need a new mayor. If that is the solution in his mind. I mentioned all of the problems that these cities are grappling with, and diseases are a huge one of them. I mentioned smallpox. Someone noted that it had been eradicated. There's actually there have been a number of interesting stories of fears that it's coming back. Of course, they say it could always be used in terms of a terrorist attack, lab leak, which we've seen that before. But there's like another, it's sort of a variant strain, I guess, called Mpox, and that is something that there has been a real significant increase in. And so there are some in the health community that are warning that smallpox, because of that being one of the reasons that those other variants that are on the rise, that it could make a comeback. And though it's something that's been eradicated, that we could, and much of this, again, is just because of dumb decisions, could make a comeback. Measles is a big one that there's been a massive spike in Chicago in particular, and the areas, once again, that we're seeing so many of these different diseases they're originating out of these facilities that are housing illegals who come to this country, and it's largely because they come from countries in which you don't have the health processes that we have here in the United States in order to take care of these problems. And it's just, in particular, a real head shaker for a lot of people when these same people on the left who would throw somebody in jail, happily throw someone in jail because they didn't wear a mask out in public during the COVID freak out, have no problem whatsoever with reintroducing measles and mumps and all these other sort of diseases into our school systems here in the country. Very interesting priority gut instinct that the left has in this country. Former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton predicted that should former President Donald Trump win a second term in November, he will pursue violent ends to end his opposition in politics and in the media. So here, of course, once again, we have perfectly measured accusations being stemmed against the president or the former president of the United States. He'll bring back slavery, he'll jail gay people, and he will, according to former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, start murdering political opposition and jailing journalists and, just getting rid of them altogether. Clinton appeared on the podcast Defending Democracy in an episode that aired Friday, where she spent the majority of the nearly 45-minute interview obsessing over Trump, who, of course, beat her in 2016. Claiming that Trump was gaga over Putin because Putin does what Trump would like to do: kill his opposition, imprison his opposition, drive journalists and others into exile, rule without any check or balance. This is what Trump really wants. Well, again, just straightforward logical question, then why didn't he do that? Was he not president for 4 years? If you're really, is that the way maniacal, insane dictators who have so little self-control over themselves and are so obsessed with power that they behave, they're like, I'm going to wait till the second term. I'm not gonna use the first 4 years in order to do it. No, I'll save that stuff for later. Oh, is that how that works? Well, that makes sense, doesn't it? That makes perfect sense. Let's not forget, these are the same people who claimed after Trump beat Hillary that Trump didn't even think he was going to win and didn't want to be president. Remember that? There were all of these stories circulating, and it was reported in the mainstream news that Trump was more shocked than anyone. There were reports that he was telling Melania, I don't even want this job. So the same people who told us that Trump didn't even want to be president now tell us that he's so desperate for power, he will murder political opposition and imprison journalists. Yeah, didn't do it the first 4 years, but It's just because he's so calculating. This person that we are also supposed to believe is an uncalculating idiot who has no self-control whatsoever, apparently, for reasons no one has bothered to explain, decided not to behave in that way the first 4 years of his presidency. Now, of course, and I will here in a moment, do a little compare and contrast if we really do have concerns about dictatorships and what that looks like. But there are people who believe this stuff. This is what's so dangerous. In fact, there was a letter to the editor. Springfield News Leader printed. And it's somebody, much like the Bernie Sanders campaign volunteer, who just regurgitated the same talking points that Republicans are going to kill old people, Republicans are going to take away this and that, and they're going to cause the planet, we're all going to die. And so he felt that his calling, based off of the belief that what Bernie Sanders and the Democrats were saying was true, to kill as many Republicans as possible. He wrote letters to the editor. So it's no surprise here. There are letters to the editor, the Springfield News Leader. Trump's a danger to democracy. They believe this stuff. It's as if his first 4 years in the presidency never occurred. Now, when you note that, they try to throw in, well, January 6th. Anytime anyone on the left claims that Donald Trump encouraged an insurrection, ask him for the audio of the speech in which he did that. You ever notice that you never, ever, ever see that posted by these left-wingers? You ever notice any time a letter to the editor is written by some left-wing individual, some Democrat activist, that makes the claim that Donald Trump incited an insurrection? They don't provide the quotes. I wonder if even they don't realize, or if they do realize, why that is. Or they never note this issue has been in an official forum tried, if you will. That was in the Senate, controlled by the Democrats. Inciting that January 6th, that was one of the articles of impeachment. He was found not guilty. I notice in these letters to the editor, they never mention that. Springfield's Talk 1041, the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. Washington Examiner has a piece. Hillary Clinton suggesting Trump wants to kill opposition and exile journalists. And as I noted, what's most dangerous about the hysterics of people like Hillary Clinton is that there are people who believe it. In fact, here's a news leader. I mean, it's almost word for word to some degree. And Rodney Loomer to the news leader. Trump is a threat to American democracy. Just ask the Republicans who worked for him. And a lot of it, of course, it's the same rhetoric. So many of these people that decide to take it upon themselves to try and murder or assassinate, whether Supreme Court justices or Republican members of Congress, it's because they believe the things that are so over the top. They believe that they are potentially saving the country. They believe that they're saving lives. It is a calling for them. And when you see the news leader print these based off these hysterical claims filled with disinformation, totally detached from reality, instead of having concerns about the mental wellness of these individuals and recognizing, we've seen people write letters like this before, and, they took it upon themselves to try to murder elected officials. All right, well, let's just keep printing them, keep spreading the fear-mongering, the disinformation without noting Trump was president for 4 years and he never did any of these things they claim he's going to do. You've got the claims Hillary Clinton, he just really liked Putin. I'm sorry, but did Putin not recently, in an interview, note that he preferred the leadership styles of Joe Biden over Trump, claiming that Biden was more stable, using the same talking points as the Democrats? But of course, when you note that, well, no, that doesn't count. See, he's trying to trick you because he really wants Trump to be president. And so if he says he likes Biden, that, they have to twist themselves into these pretzels in order to rationalize the reality. There was an article about the reason that you have these countries acting up in the way that they are and Putin behaving badly is because they want Trump to become president. This is all an effort to make Biden look bad in order to rig the election so that Trump wins. Now, this is imagine having this mindset that the evil dictators in the world act less like evil dictators when Donald Trump is president because they like him. And then when he's not president, somebody like Joe Biden is president, and they go back to acting like evil dictators and doing things that they're told that they should not be doing, like invading countries and testing nuclear weapons. That's because they want Trump to be president again, I guess, so that they can go back to not being bad guys. That's how the mind of these people works. Now, let's just talk about some of these specific accusations here. Trump wants to kill political opposition, Hillary Clinton says. Oh, here's a story that fits in just fine with that. Democrat candidate for Congress. I'm going to get these out of order. Here we go. Democrat looks to strip Secret Service protection from Trump if he's convicted of anything. House Democrats have introduced a bill that would strip any protection from the Secret Service if an individual is a convicted felon sentenced to prison, which of course clearly is meant to leave Donald Trump in a prison with absolutely no protection whatsoever. Now, if the purpose of that isn't to have him murdered, please explain to me what it is. What's the purpose of this? These aren't just some left-wing activists that are filling their wish list out on Reddit. These are members of Congress. Representative Benny Thompson, Democrat Mississippi, the former chair of the January 6th Congressional Committee, introduced the legislation that would automatically nix Secret Service protection from those who have been convicted of a federal or state felony that carries a minimum 1-year prison term. The proposed bill is called the Denying Infinite Security and Government Resource Allocated Towards Convicted and Extremely Dishonorable Former Protectees Act, which comes out to disgraced. So it's obviously targeting Donald Trump. So while they are out there claiming that Trump wants to create conditions in which his political opposition gets killed, they're actually introducing legislation to do just that to Trump. On a broader scale, you've got a Democrat candidate for Congress wishing death to all MAGA. This being Nate McMurray, running for the congressional seat in New York 26. Also, which administration is currently attempting to put journalists in prison who covered January 6th? There were dozens and dozens of journalists inside the Capitol on January 6th. There is a small number of them that the Biden administration is looking to imprison, and it's just a coincidence, we're told, that they're all from outlets that are not mainstream. One of them being The Blaze. Individuals that aren't just taking the talking points from the White House, but are actually doing some investigative reporting, and this administration is attempting to put them in prison. So, again, here you have a current president that Putin says he prefers over Trump. You have Democrats attempting to remove Secret Service protection from submitting legislation from Donald Trump if he's convicted of a felony, which, of course, is clearly intended to make sure that he gets killed. Not to mention, they still refuse to give RFK Jr. Secret Service protection, given the history of Kennedy assassinations and the security breaches that have already occurred at campaign events. Let's not forget that it was this administration, with Merrick Garland as Attorney General, who told law enforcement to not arrest individuals that were violating federal law by protesting outside the Supreme Court justices' homes. Telling them to stand down, creating that hostile environment. An environment in which, had it not been for the sister of a would-be assassin calling 911, we could very well have had more than one dead conservative Supreme Court justice on our hands. We want to make a listing between Biden and Trump, between Democrats and Republicans, as to which side is actually taking active steps to put the lives in danger of their political opposition, who are trying to actively imprison their political opposition. We can make that list all day long. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. The Pyramid Roofing or the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line got a text in. Haven't more people associated with the Clintons and Obamas died mysteriously than those associated with Trump? Well, yes. Factually speaking, that is accurate. And in fact, this story, we a couple weeks ago talked about this small airport guy that the Biden administration was going after because they were accusing him of legally purchasing firearms, but then without getting, I think, a $200 permit to sell them as a dealer, was going to gun shows and selling them. This is something it's a small fine. It's generally never prosecuted, but they decided to do an early morning raid of his home, and they shot him to death. The Department of Justice has admitted that in violation of the ATF's rules, none of those individuals that stormed the home had any body cameras on. Springfield's Talk 1041, streaming live, KSGF.com. I'm Nick Reed. We got a lot going on this Friday. Number one, we have brought back, there was a bit of a pause in our Local for Less. I believe the whole reason for that was the outfit that we used from a technical standpoint. In order to facilitate that, we switched over, and so there was this lull in our ability to, or a pause in our ability to do the Local for Less, which essentially are half-price deals, but it is back. And this Friday at 10 a.m., you will be able to purchase a $50 gift certificate for Scramblers for only $25. Those will go fast, I can tell you that. So that is going to be going on at 10 o'clock this morning. Of course, Friday we will be at Scramblers. We will be doing the Friday Roadshow, sponsored by Extra Mile Home Inspection and Real Estate Repair. And then it will be a veterans breakfast as well. Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, Delta Roofing, Serenity Honors, and Scramblers all chipping in to buy breakfast for veterans. That is this Friday from 3 to 6. Sorry, this Friday from 3 to 6, from 6 to 9. I don't even know where that 3 to 6 came from. From 6A to 9A. Come out and have breakfast as veterans, and you will get that free. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty, is also scheduled to join us in the 8 o'clock hour, so it's a great opportunity if you have any housing questions, real estate questions about buying or selling. I know oftentimes you may have sort of these questions that are more in terms of laying the groundwork in your mind as to maybe next year you're going to sell, or you don't know. Should I wait until the summer, or should I wait a year when interest rates may be lower, whatever the reasons may be? Utilize her as an asset to answer those questions. Now, you can always reach out to her. You could messenger her through Facebook. You can call her, but there's just nothing, in my opinion, that's as great as a face-to-face conversation, especially with Emily Johnson. So, barring any closings or anything going on like that, Friday she should be joining us out at Scramblers in the 8 o'clock hour, so you can utilize that as an opportunity if you have any questions for Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. And, of course, you can always find her at KSGF.com under Nick's endorsements. There have been some arrests made. The left-wing activists that have been infiltrating, or surfacing, I should say, not really infiltrating university campuses. They're already there. But displaying the anti-Semitism to the point that Jews are just being told, don't go to class. This is Biden's America. That all of this is occurring. This isn't Trump's America, in which, until last year, we were all told that anti-Semitism was a Trump thing. You weren't seeing it, but they would tell you that it existed, and it existed because these were Donald Trump supporters. The terrorist attack on Israel on October 7th of last year brought to the surface where the real anti-Semitism is, and it's in the Democrat Party, where it is most vocal and becoming, in some instances, most dangerous and threatening, are on these plots of land across our country in which the rules, the regulations, and the culture is completely controlled by Democrats. That's not a coincidence. You don't see this occurring in conservative safe havens. You don't see this occurring in right-wing world. No. It's in the areas that are completely controlled by the left. And so now we're, seeing these arrests occur, and they have flat out canceled at Columbia actual, classes in class, but instead saying stay home. And increasingly, we're seeing leaders within this, for example, Just the News, Columbia rabbi tells Jewish students to go home. Just leave Columbia. Because the pro-terrorist protests are being allowed to intensify. by the Democrats who run these universities. The world that the Democrats and the media wanted you to believe that Donald Trump was going to create, as they falsely claimed that Donald Trump said that Nazis were very fine people. They had to lie in order to make you believe that Donald Trump was going to turn this country into what the Democrats have turned it into when it comes in the context of anti-Semitism. And that is a country in which pro-terrorist individuals march through college campuses, threaten Jewish students. It is a world in which Jewish leadership, rabbis, are having to tell Jewish students, leave, go home for your own safety. Your life is in danger in America in 2024. Your life is in danger on university campuses in 2024. A world in this country where you have Democrat activists openly calling for the completion of Hitler's dream. This horrific anti-Semitic country, or the uprising of those sentiments we're seeing in this country, is what we were all told Donald Trump was going to bring us, yet who has brought us here? Oh, but they're outraged. Mayor Adams in New York is outraged. The White House, well, we're just outraged. If you're that outraged, pull the funding. Pull all federal dollars. They have no problem threatening to pull, and they have done it, pull federal dollars if you don't, promote LGBTQ stuff, if you don't abide by the pronoun rules that they arbitrarily make up. They have no problem whatsoever threatening to pull federal funding from any organization that is out of line with what they say they want. So do it here. In fact, if I were Republicans, I would call for this. Call for the White House to demand this. Hey, you know what? I mean, just some perhaps overly creative ideas. But if Joe Biden is continuing on this quest to transfer, because he's able to, apparently, despite the Supreme Court says you can't do this, but he's like, I'm going to do it anyway. And he transfers the student loan debt to other people who didn't take it out. Why don't you transfer it specifically to the pro-terrorist demonstrators that are students? Why don't you transfer it to them? Well, you can't do that. Why not? Go ahead. I would call on the White House to immediately, or just to cut off all funding for these universities. They won't do it. But we'll see how serious they really are about what they contend is their horror at this anti-Semitism. Well, what are you going to do about it? Look at the weather in a moment. Right now, the latest news update. And the first alert forecast sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements from Color 10 Fox 49. Meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Sunny, 70 today, 49 tonight. Cloud 74 tomorrow. Wednesday, mostly sunny, a high near 69. Streaming live, KSGF.com. Congressman Burleson with us this morning. Of course, the last couple of weeks, not able to have him on. Last week, we were in Dominican Republic. By the way, you were missed. We were at the same place where you and Angie had joined us years ago. We were at that same resort, which was an incredible resort. And then you were in Israel. And I do want to talk coming up here about the vote with, that lacked border security, but with Ukraine and so forth, and just the what I thought were horrific visuals of Democrats waving Ukrainian flags in Congress. Just so, I don't know, it's just uneasy feeling. But before that, I would like for you to talk about your time in Israel, and you obviously a supporter of so much there, but being there, I think it does give a person a different sense, a different deep-seated feeling and commitment to what is going on. So talk about that, if you would.
Yeah, Israel is an important ally to the United States strategically, politically, militarily, economically, all of those reasons, and it's at threat. As a Christian, it's the origin story of my faith.
Right.
It occurs right there. As a Christian, the Bible makes it clear that he who blesses Israel will be blessed, and he who curses Israel will be cursed. I don't want to be on the other side of that. So, to me, now, does that mean that we kowtow to anything and everything that Israel does and says? No. But Israel is in the right in this circumstance. And by visiting there, it was more evident than ever to me that this is good versus evil. This is absolutely biblical stuff that's happening. And it's terrifying to me. So we stayed in Jerusalem, and we toured things. And I came to this point of reflection, is that I got to see the places where Jesus was crucified, rested and buried, and got to see, where the temple was, all of these things. And we get to go look at these things because Israel exists. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Had they not existed, we would not, as Christians, be allowed in those areas. Those monuments would not be allowed. Christianity would not be preached or allowed to be conveyed. And yet, in that community, because Israel is a free nation, people have freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, all those things. You have Muslim mosques. We would hear the call to prayer when we were in Israel. You would see neighborhoods where you'd have the Star of David, illuminated in somebody's window, and a Christian cross in another, and a Muslim crescent in another. You just picture all of these people living peacefully in one place, and yet that's not acceptable to the neighboring countries. And so because it's a threat to Palestine, it's a threat to Syria, it's a threat to Jordan, but mostly it's a threat to Iran. And so we toured the area that where the attacks from Gaza came, and we went into these communities that are called kibbutzes. It's like a neighborhood association, if you will. A little bit more draconian than that, but it's a farming community where people live very close together. And we went home to home to home and heard the stories of the families that lived there, saw their photos, and these homes were riddled with bullets. They were burnt from the inside out. The faces, we knew that based on the tags that if the color was black, that meant the person was dead. If the color was red, they were kidnapped. It was horrific to watch, and to hear the story from one of the accounts of the people that survived firsthand, what these people experienced, or maybe people that survived, what they could tell. Then we went to the music festival site and heard stories of both, terror and heroicism. You have one Israeli man who's retired from the IDF who got a phone call from a friend that his son was at the music festival. This man drove his pickup truck and called all of his sons to meet him. He drove to the music festival, infiltrated, was able to get kids that were hiding in the bushes while the Palestinians were there, while Hamas was there, still shooting, and able to smuggle kids out in the darkness and get them to his truck. He was able. They count that he was able to save hundreds and hundreds of kids.
Wow.
By getting them out. Unfortunately, one of the most gruesome stories happened there, where you have, in Israel they have bomb shelters because they're used to being bombed, and when an air raid siren goes on, they go to the nearest bomb shelter, which looks a lot like bus stops, right? Well, a lot of the kids in these music festivals were crammed into these bomb shelters, and what Hamas was doing was they knew that this strategy would happen. They were planted outside the bomb shelters, and they would let them fill up with people, and then they would throw grenades into the bomb shelters. And one of the most terrific stories is a young man and his friend who were very skilled at this, but they were able to throw out 7 grenades before the last one got him. His name is Hirsch. He's a U.S. citizen who was there. He is currently being held hostage. And it's a reminder to me that there are almost a dozen or more U.S. citizens that are being held that, and Israel is going in to save these people, not the United States. We're not risking our troops to go in to save these U.S. citizens. And so just as a reminder to people, when people ask about this war and complain about Israel and the way in which they're going about this, just remember that they are the ones risking their lives and risking their fortune to save our people as well.
Well, and it was announced, I think it's supposed to be perhaps announced today, that the Biden administration is actually going to impose sanctions on certain or one division of IDF, which many are saying this is going to have horrific implications even on the United States and make it more dangerous for U.S. troops, which would be consistent, of course, with this administration. But you think about when you note that you have the Israelis who are risking their lives to save Americans and the horrendous betrayal that on a daily basis our administration is demonstrating to the Israel. It's horrific.
It is. I came away with certain things that I wanted to dispel to the American people. One is about U.S. citizens being held captive. The other thing that I was shocked to realize is that the attack came in multiple waves. The first wave was the elite guard of Hamas. Then the next wave of troops came in, which were regular rank-and-file troops. And then the third wave and fourth wave were citizens. These are people that were not associated with Hamas. They're just citizens who came in and raided, and they're the ones that committed some of the worst atrocities, the rapes, the kidnappings, all of those things. They believe happened, they know happened from citizens. And so when people say, oh, the people, Hamas is evil, but the citizens are innocent, that is not entirely true.
Yeah.
It was the thousands upon thousands. It was the overwhelming percentage of people that came in and did destruction were not Hamas. It was the citizens of Palestine and Gaza.
We're talking with Congressman Burleson. I do want to ask you about the situation with the funding and a couple aspects of it. One, for Ukraine, and Speaker Johnson has on numerous occasions appeared to be consistent until recently that there would be no advancement on utilizing U.S. tax dollars to help Ukraine secure their border without us also doing the same. That does not appear to be the case. And there, Sarah and I were talking off air, and she's like, "Well, what happened? What is the situation where you have this guy that is speaker, and he ends up with siding with the Democrats, and this pans out the way that it did.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand. I don't understand the person that that we knew back in October when we voted him as a speaker, and for 6 months said that we need to reform FISA. For years, he sat on the Judiciary Committee and helped craft the reform to FISA. He then advocated that we're going to protect our border first before we protect the border of Ukraine. Multiple, that we're going to secure a budget. I mean, here's a pro-life individual. Clearly, his faith is pro-life, and yet he was willing to tolerate not only keeping the money that, or not putting. He was able to tolerate us stripping out language that protected money from going to pay for abortion related to travel. Not only that, he allowed language that specifically earmarked money for abortion related travel. That is a person I don't recognize at this point. I don't recognize the actions. And I don't, and the sad part is I'm not sure. I think that the reason why he's come to this conclusion is because our conference and if you look at the votes about Ukraine, you look at the votes about this bill in general, the vast majority of Republicans are part of the uniparty. They are part of the problem. And until we fix that, we're not gonna have a conservative speaker. We're not gonna be able to save America. The people need to wake up and pay attention to who's running in the primaries at every level of office. Yeah. It's no longer acceptable just elect somebody that's the next person in line. Yeah. We have to pay attention to the values and how these people, how they're deeply rooted in their core, because the things that we face when you get elected, the amount of pressure to vote with the party and to vote with, just to vote in line is enormous. And we need people that have courage to stand up to it.
I believe that you can have honest people having differing opinions about funding for Ukraine and the different levels of it and accountability. I think that there can be that. And there can be honest people who have different opinions than I do on it, who are well-intended and maybe even right. But when I see that when that vote succeeded and the Democrats got what they wanted, that they all in Congress were waving Ukrainian flags and cheering, there was just something very unsettling about that, particularly because, frankly, in my mind, I can't think of the last time I saw a grouping of Democrats together like that, waving American flags in the same way with the same excitement. And when you have one of two political parties that in recent memory, you can't even, I can't visualize elected Democrats waving American flags with such excitement, doing it for another country. There's just, and it's not an anti-Ukrainian or there's just something very, very unsettling about what's going on.
It was unsettling. And look, we could have, to your point, we could have an intellectual discussion about Ukraine, but the problem is that when you set up, when we know that the situation at hand is that it's the one thing the Democrats want. It's the one thing Chuck Schumer wants. It's the one thing Joe Biden wants. And you give that to them, you have lost everything. And look, I don't mean to use it as a political tool, but when you juxtapose, when you place on top of that there are serious doubts about how well the money is being spent, about how much of it is being stolen, and whether this is a war that we ought to be involved in at all. When you place on top of that the fact that we have an unsecured border, and the only way to fix it is to leverage this money that I think is in question anyway, then that's the fight. And our speaker completely abdicated that fight. And that's why the Democrats cheered, because they got everything they wanted. This year, they might as well had Speaker Hakeem Jeffries.
Yeah.
You might as well have had him, because we did not successfully navigate any wins in any of this. And that is an absolute travesty for the
Well,
Republican Party and for America.
and I also have a real problem with, again, if you feel that it's the right thing to do, that's fine. But portraying it as because, aside from America, Zelensky is the single greatest fighter for freedom and democracy in existence. I mean, let's be realistic. There are journalists that he's imprisoned, and he's canceled elections. So, I mean, I don't know. And it doesn't, again, mean that he shouldn't be helped or that the people of Ukraine shouldn't be facing what they are. But to claim and try to portray that as the beacon of light for freedom and democracy in this world is not an accurate portrayal. Congressman Burleson, as always, it's a great pleasure, and I appreciate your insight this morning as always.
Yep. Thank you, my friend.
All right, take care. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Apologies to traffic standing by for our final traffic report this morning. Look at weather and more. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. First alert forecast sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals from Color 10 Fox 49 meteorologist Tom Schmidt. Sunshine, a high near 70 today, clear 49 tonight, cloudy 74 tomorrow, Wednesday, mostly sunny with a high near 69. So, did you feel better about the answer from Congressman Burleson on what happened with Mike
Actually,
Johnson?
yes, I do.
Now, do you feel better about Mike Johnson, or just that you're not insane?
Just that I'm not insane, because I kept asking you, like, what happened? And you're like, what aspect? I mean, all of it.
Yeah.
What happened? And so whenever you asked Congressman Burleson, he was like, I don't know. So
Well, and he said, I don't recognize this
Yes.
person, and we might as well have election denier Hakeem Jeffries, who's the minority leader, be Speaker of the House at this point. I appreciate Congressman Burleson's approach on Mike Johnson from the beginning, because it's a similar approach that I have. I think anyone who comes along, okay, they have an opportunity to prove themselves. And based off of who Mike Johnson had presented himself for years and the things that he had consistently said he stood for, that's one of the reasons that he got support of some of the Freedom Caucus members, was because of that. But again, it's not the person that you support or don't support. It is their actions, and that's where you have, and my feelings are the same as Congressman Burleson's, like, who is this person? There's a scene from a movie that every so often, when something like this occurs, comes into mind. And when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about Speaker Johnson, who has long said, been very a number of things. I mean, Congressman Burleson pointed out reforming FISA, didn't do that. Of course, the way that we deal with spending, not doing that. And then most recently, the promise that our border security would be a priority and that Ukraine's border security would not occur without first securing ours. And then there was that betrayal. And this is why they're celebrated. Democrats, if you were to watch that vote occur, and the reaction of the Democrat Party, the celebration, you would think clearly they're in charge. You would also think they're in charge of Ukraine because they were waving Ukrainian flags. It's betrayal. And there's a scene that has always really stuck with me, largely because there was so much communicated without any dialogue, and it was in Braveheart towards the end, and William Wallace, played, of course, by Mel Gibson, who he's they're in battle, and he ends up in battle with the opposition physically, whose face is fully covered with armor, and then they knock one another off their horses, I believe, and William Wallace pulls it off, and he sees it is Bruce, whatever his title was, and this was somebody he thought was his ally and his friend, Robert the Bruce. And Mel Gibson, just like, you can see his world. He has this realization that everything that he thought wasn't. That this person that he had a great trust with and an allyship with, actually had been working with the opposition to defeat everything that he believed in and was fighting for. And it's just this massively devastating blow when he realizes that there was this level of betrayal. And while the betrayal isn't that deep with Mike Johnson, because it's not, we were going based off his word. But I think that to some degree, there's a betrayal that so many people believe or they feel, because it is the Republican Party. And that here, once again, this party that says you got to vote for us in order to do this, 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 and then they end up siding with the opposition. And it happens over and over and over again. Incidentally, it's one of the reasons that I believe Republicans, particularly in Congress, have a difficult time winning elections when it should be a total blowout, because they, as much as they want to blame Trump for it, they alienate voters. They make voters say to themselves, what is the point? With Republicans in charge, FISA is given a big go-ahead. The promises of putting America first when it comes to border security, that was a lie. spending. They run around pointing the finger at Biden when it comes to inflation because of spending, yet the spending continues. There's no stop, and their answer is always the same. Well, we can't do it. We just don't have enough Republicans, yet they will support, when it comes to reelection, the Republicans that are the problem. If some conservative or Trump-supported challenger comes along in a primary and tries to beat the incumbent that sides with the Democrats, it's the Republican establishment that jumps in to save the establishment candidate that they point the finger at, claiming, well, we can't do anything about, constantly giving wins to the Democrats and betraying our word to our voters because we have these Republicans in here that they are the ones who support. I'm trying to think, and I know that the answer is they don't. With the consistency that Republicans betray their word and their voters, that Democrats, they just don't do it. Now, the outcomes are a betrayal. They claim, oh, well, we'll do this, and this will be the outcome. We'll raise taxes. It'll help the economy. The outcomes are a lie, but their promises to push certain legislation, to get things done, can you think of any instance? I mean, think about it. When Nancy Pelosi was in charge, and there was some massively fundamental difference between what Republicans wanted and Democrats wanted, and Nancy Pelosi and Democrats held Congress, and instead she decided to get on the side of Republicans and pass meaningful Republican conservative legislation that caused huge – has that ever happened? No. I mean, it's unfortunate, as dishonest and depraved as the Democrat Party is, the leadership in the Republican Party, their word is meaningless. Nothing. And Speaker Johnson has demonstrated that his word is meaningless. And frankly, it's not great imagery for Christians when somebody who touts Christianity, which part of that is being a person of your word and being honest, that everything that you said you will do and fight for when you get into power, you do the opposite. That's called a lie. And when it comes to what I'm sure the excuse making is, well, but, this and that, when you give your word, it isn't unless I change my mind. That's the point of your word. Is so people don't have to wonder, well, what happens if this happens or what happens if that happens? A person who is an honest person and whose word means something, you don't have to worry about it. You're able to say, well, it doesn't matter because they gave me my word. They gave me his word, or he gave me his word. And I think the realization for a lot of Republican voters that when it comes to delivering on promises, that Democrats are by far much more honorable than Republicans are, that's not a very easy pill to swallow for Republican voters, because it leaves us with the ultimate fundamental question: who represents us? Now you hear Congressman Burleson. He shares this same sense and feeling. But he doesn't really have a party either. In terms of a leadership, a party that is run by individuals who share the same beliefs and who are honest, and he's also without a party ultimately. And so for those that want to trash on the Matt Gaetz and the Marjorie Taylor Greens because they're trying to do something about it that, they say, well, it's meaningless, it's just going to cause disruptions. What are we supposed to do? What party do we support? Answer me that. The people that want smaller government, the people that want a secure border, the people that want leadership that will actually do what they say they're going to do. Unfortunately, the answer for that is Democrats. They have that. Unfortunately for liberty-minded Americans, their goals conflict with the goals of liberty, but they unfortunately are the only trustworthy ones when it comes to delivering. And so for the rest of us, we're left with no one. We do not have a party. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Quick Draw Gun in Monette. Highly recommend taking a trip down there to visit, especially if you are looking for Benelli firearms, because they just received a large shipment, and that is one thing that you can always expect when you make Quick Draw Gun in Monette your go-to firearms shop. They are always adding new names, new product lines, new inventory, so they can better serve you as a customer. That's their main goal, is to make sure that you are prepared. But they also have a great selection of used inventory if that's something that you're looking for, plus, of course, accessories, a great selection of concealed carry purses for my ladies out there, and of course, their custom laser engraving and Cerakoting services as well. Now, Quick Draw Gun in Monette, super easy to find. It's just a straight shot down 60, and it's about an hour away. Highly recommend the trip down there. But if you are looking for that physical address, if you want to check those shop hours, plus if you just want to go ahead and give them a call, you can find all of that contact information for Quick Draw Gun in Monette at ksgf.com under the Sarah's Endorsements tab.
All right, a couple things. KSGF.com. Let's see. You can get registered for Godfather's Pizza Night, something that we talk about quite consistently. Also, there is a chance for you to win tickets to see Casting Crowns at the Black Oak Amphitheater with special guest Katie Nichol. That is coming up Thursday, September 12th. Your chance again to win tickets for that at ksgf.com. And then at 10 o'clock on Friday, your chance to win to get a $50 purchase, $50 gift certificate to Scramblers for only $25. For those of you that attend the Friday morning show or you go to lunch at Scramblers, great place for lunch as well. Definitely going to be a worthwhile deal for you. Those will go very quickly. Food items always go very quickly, but Scramblers, of course, given the amount of you that visit us and hang out with us at Scramblers, like I said, they will go very quickly. And that will be 10 a.m. on Friday. And we also do, again, have a Heroes Breakfast this Friday at Scramblers, where veterans get free breakfast thanks to Serenity Honors, Delta Roofing, Air Services, Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, Electrical, and Scramblers. That is 6A to 9A on Friday. Some of your text messages. Let's see. Republican politicians lie with promises to their voters like the Dem politicians have been lying to minorities. Another noting, this is now why I consider myself a libertarian, an anarchist leaning libertarian. Some of these text messages are in regards to the continued betrayal and breaking of the word of Speaker Johnson. Most recently, he had, of course, promised that there would not be any border security funding for Ukraine without first, or at least at the same time, securing our border. And the Democrats, with great celebration, waving not American flags, but Ukrainian flags in Congress, with the help of Speaker Johnson, getting the funding for Ukraine, but not for our own border. And as Congressman Burleson noted, I don't recognize this person. Might as well have Speaker, the Democrat leadership election denier Hakeem Jeffries might as well be Speaker of the House at this point. Another text message, I figure someone got to the speaker with threats of revealing information, whether it's true or false. That could harm his political career. Another saying, why hasn't Burleson submitted term limits? Why hasn't Burleson submitted a bill to remove the provision that allows Congress to violate the law while in session? When will KSGF put Burleson on air with someone who is willing to challenge him in those areas, knowing Burleson is all about Burleson? It's clearly an anti-Burleson person. I don't know. Listen, the Supreme Court has weighed in when it comes to term limits, noting that that's something that is far beyond just legislation being passed. I don't know what his thoughts are on term limits. But I will say this on term limits. I've gone back and forth on term limits. I believe that anyone who thinks term limits is somehow the answer to the problem may not have a full grasp of the problem. I can't even fathom how infinitely irrelevant term limits would be to the problems that we have in this country. Yeah, I'm not inherently against them, and I'm not. I mean, we have them for the presidency. Has that helped that any? I mean, really? Do term limits somehow make Joe Biden less Joe Biden? Do term limits somehow make someone who becomes president of the United States less corrupt? No. There is an argument, and I think it is a valid argument, that potentially term limits could even make things worse, because then bureaucrats that are in position now, I mean, you think they're empowered now? It's been relayed to me that with term limits when it comes to Missouri, that it is very, very, very difficult to hold department heads accountable for anything, because they know that they'll be there beyond you will. That, that you're going to be term limited out, I'll still be here. Sort of the Fidel Castro approach that, okay, President of the United States, guess what? When you're gone, I'll still be here. And I'm not saying that's a reason to be opposed to them, but just this idea that term limits would make a bit of difference, I don't believe it would make one bit of difference. We have so many problems that are so deep that it would be meaningless ultimately. But I could be wrong on that. Glenn Beck's coming up next. Talk to you tomorrow. I'm Nick Reed.